My ex-wife wants more child support after I gave her everything. Welcome back to Reddit Court Files, where we pull real stories from Reddit and put them on trial. Today's case comes from Ars Legal Advice. Quick note, nothing in this video is legal advice. We're storytellers, not lawyers. Now let's get into it. The story we're diving into today is a cautionary tale of good intentions paving a very expensive road to hardship, all tangled up in the messy world of post-divorce finances and an ex-wife who knows how to play the system. Our narrator, let's call him David, walked away from his divorce with absolutely nothing, and for a very specific reason. After cheating and making other poor decisions, he felt incredible guilt and believed giving up everything, the house, all assets, all money, and even primary custody of his 2 young children, was a way to show his ex-wife he wanted to reconcile. He didn't even read her financial statement in detail, only to discover much later it was riddled with egregious lies about her expenses. But by then, he knew it was too late to do anything about it. At the time, David had been unemployed for 15 months, received no unemployment benefits, and his financial statement quite accurately reflected that he had nothing and made nothing. He remained unemployed for a staggering 22 months in an industry particularly hard hit by the pandemic. Yet, when he finally secured a director-level job in May 2025, bringing in a robust $230,000 a year, he accepted a child support order of $900 a week without question, still without an attorney. That's a staggering $3,600 a month for a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, especially after he'd walked away from the divorce with zero. He even paid her an extra $3,000 to $4,000 before the official order kicked in, just wanting to support his kids. But the good times didn't last. 6 months later, in October 2025, David was laid off again. He went on unemployment, receiving $552 a week, but deliberately chose not to amend the child support order to reflect his reduced income. His ex-wife knew this was happening, and he did it because he still mistakenly hoped for reconciliation. This meant she continued to receive the higher amount, an extra $291 a week of his $553 unemployment check, instead of the $262 she would have been entitled to. This choice created a massive $13,000 in arrears, including interest and penalties, which his ex-wife had verbally agreed to erase later, with an effective date predating the arrears. So, despite him effectively overpaying by $8,800 during that time, he was now facing a $13,000 debt. Just as his unemployment benefits ran out after 7 months, he secured a new contract job, but it lasted only 5.5 weeks before all 7 consultants, including David, were let go. Now, he was unemployed again, with zero income, and no more unemployment benefits to fall back on. When he told his ex-wife that the very same child support worksheet she had always used as gospel now determined he owed only $15 a week, her response was chilling. "It's 2026 and this is Massachusetts. You really think that's all you're paying?" She was clearly going to pursue more, now that deviating from the worksheet benefited her. This gross betrayal, given their history and his attempts at reconciliation, finally made David realize the bed he'd made by never getting a lawyer. Now facing a potentially devastating legal battle, David needed to know if his ex-wife truly had a path forward to get more than the worksheet dictated. This would force them both into court, spending thousands on legal representation, unless he could contest it himself, a daunting prospect. Then, there was the elephant in the room, those $13,000 in arrears. She had always agreed to erase them, but it was never put in writing. He knew she now had leverage. If he didn't continue to give her what she wanted, she could simply deny their agreement and pursue the full amount, which he assumed would be simple for her to do. This was made even more frustrating by his ex-wife's financial situation. She earned $130,000 a year and was about to purchase an $850,000 house, despite her current very nice 2,300 square feet home having increased in value by $240,000 in 2 years. This new house was 3,600 square feet with 4.5 bathrooms and 5 bedrooms, insanely unnecessary in David's view. He pointed out that the $3,600 a month in child support he was ordered to pay previously covered the entirety of the mortgage, heat, electricity, monthly food, and school for their kids at the current house. All of it. She was buying a more expensive house that would be much more to maintain, largely on his dime. David desperately wanted to know if he could make the case that if she, on a $130,000 salary, could afford that house, when her current lifestyle was essentially 80% paid for by his child support alone, then he should be able to pay less than the initial agreed-upon amount when he found another job. He was seeking any advice before spending hundreds on a consultation and potentially thousands more on an attorney. Ultimately, the Reddit community's advice painted a clearer path for David, illuminating the critical importance of finally getting legal counsel. While his ex-wife could attempt to argue for a deviation from the child support guidelines, she would have a high bar to meet. The guidelines are presumptive, and a judge would need to find that applying them would be unjust or inappropriate in the particular circumstances of the parties. Given David's history of involuntary unemployment and his ex-wife's substantial income and recent extravagant purchase, a judge might view her demand for more than the worksheet amount as the unjust outcome. Crucially, the advice highlighted that David absolutely needed to document and present evidence of his multiple job losses, his attempts to find work, and his previous overpayments. Regarding the arrears, the verbal agreement, while difficult to prove, wasn't entirely useless. His continued overpayment during his unemployment, which directly benefited her, would be strong evidence to show intent and a de facto agreement that the arrears were being mitigated or offset. A judge might be swayed by the equity of the situation, especially if David could demonstrate her earlier promises. And finally, David could indeed make a compelling case for a downward deviation or a lower amount of child support once he found new employment, particularly given her $130,000 salary and the sheer unnecessary expense of her new $850,000 house. If her lifestyle, including a massive new mortgage, was being sustained by child support disproportionately, it could demonstrate she has more than sufficient means to support the children herself, potentially arguing for a reduction or, at minimum, preventing her from successfully asking for more. David's victory wouldn't necessarily be a dramatic courtroom win, but a strategic legal defense, preventing his ex-wife from exploiting his past goodwill and current vulnerability. The critical takeaway here. Turns out, good intentions are never a substitute for documented agreements and proper legal representation when navigating the complexities of post-divorce financial obligations. That's the verdict on today's case. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was justice served? Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a filing.